Well, good morning, everyone. Nice to see so many of you, and I'm sure others will come in and join you. I'm not Neil Gavin, as you probably guessed. I'm Steve Wheeler. I'm standing in for Neil because, unfortunately, he's succumbed to the virus this week, as have several of our chairs. So we're all substitutes for other guys, you know, to coin the old Who song. So you'll find some of us doubling up in our sessions. But all the speakers I'm aware of are all meant to be here. They're all here, as far as I know. So you'll have a full program today. So welcome to the track one. In a moment, I'm going to introduce our speaker to you. But before that, just a few bits of housekeeping for you, as we always have to do. This is the follow-up to the May conference. Who was at the May conference? Oh, quite a few of you, so old hands. That was great, wasn't it, being back together for the first, I was just saying to Julian over here, just back together for the first time in almost 3 years. It was quite surreal, wasn't it, to see each other without any pixelation on your faces, you know, to be in real life together. But this is the follow-up. It's a one-day event, as you know, and this is more interactive. It's all about following up on the stuff that you talked about in the May conference, really, and expanding upon it. So that's why you're in tables together. So you're going to be social and you're going to talk with each other during this session, hopefully. And if you're on the table on your own, then you need to move, I think. Otherwise, you'll be in splendid isolation. All right. So tea and coffee are going to be freely available throughout the day. I think you have to buy your own lunch, unfortunately. But the good thing is at 4 o'clock, we've got wine. All right. So you're going to be able to quaff a few drinks together and do some social stuff. That's right outside in the exhibition hall. What else do I need to tell you? That's really about it. I'm not going to say any more than that because the rest is just a bit of fluff, really. But so thank you all for coming. And now, can I just ask you to welcome our speaker, Fiona Lettany. She's a senior analyst at Fosway Group. Thank you.
Good morning. Great to be here. And actually, I've got a few questions for you, but one that's not scripted is I'm just like to know how many of you or how long you've actually been in the learning tech industry. So how many of you have been in the learning technology world for less than 3 years? Okay, so you're COVID babies then. So 3 to 5 years? Okay. 5 to 10 years? Okay. 10 plus. It's quite a lot of you. So I've been in the learning tech industry for over 20 years now. And you're supposed to say, but you don't look old enough. But that said, what I've been doing sort of over those 20 years has always been involved with the learning systems market. So I've either sold, managed, or implemented them. I'm now the senior analyst in Fosway, and I lead the research on learning systems. So this session is a bit of an indulgence for me in the sense that that's what we're going to be talking about and looking at what the new trends are in the market. So my first question is, you know, who's in the room, apart from what I've just asked. So where do you work? Are you in L&D with an internal focus? Are you working on customer or partner education? Both of the internal and external focus, or none of the above? So how many of you have an internal focus with L&D? Okay. How many of you are externally focused looking at customer and partner education? That's a great number. Great. Okay. How many of you do both? All right. Good. And then none of the above. All right. Are you in the wrong room? No. Sorry. Okay. So in terms of those that, you know, what you're doing, I'm looking now at the roles. So in terms of that, and these are obviously really kind of generalized. So are you administering a learning system? Or are you a designer of learning? Do you manage both or none of those? So administering a learning system, how many of you do that? Not many, or you don't want to admit it because you haven't got your hands way up there. And learning design, okay? And manage all of the above. All right, so that's quite a lot of you, good. And anything else? Okay, all right, we'll maybe have a conversation about that in a bit. So, what I just want to explain about, you probably heard of Fosway. Actually, another question. So, how many of you before this session had actually heard of Fosway? Phew, all right, so I don't have to explain too much about, except that we actually have a lot of data about a lot of things to do in with the HR technology and the learning technology markets. We have relationships with corporates and with the vendors alike. So, lot of data, and this is one of the outputs. So we've got 5 9 grids. One of them has been published this week, which is the Talent and People Success. This one is the Learning Systems grid. That was published back in February, and I'm just starting the work on the next one. So we're about to launch into all the briefings, both from a corporate and a vendor perspective. Oh, if you want to know how to read the grid, I've got a session in the exhibition at 3:30, just before the drink session later on today. But as part of the report on the 9 grid, if you download it, then at the back of the report, there are market trends and solution trends. These are just the headings. I'm not going to go through them, but the headings, and under each of those is a paragraph of what we're seeing in terms of the market trends. This is the solution trends, and the ones that I've highlighted are the ones that I'm just going to pick out today, and we're going to have a bit of a conversation about. So personalisation, programmatic learning, and external training. So, which of these 3 topics are you most interested in? And I'm going to try and gauge the room to find out how much time I need to spend on each of the topics where the most interest is. So we've got personalisation, customer and partner education, programmatic learning, or all of the above. So first, personalisation. Okay. Programmatic learning. Okay. And extended enterprise or customer and partner education. Sorry, I took it in the wrong order. Customer and partner education. Okay, all of the above. Okay, right, that really doesn't help, but anyway. Okay, so a lot of the data I'm going to be talking about is on our digital learning reality survey, and you can download that from the Fosway website free of charge. And there's an infographic there that looks a little bit like that. So a lot of what we're doing is going to be on there. So the first bit of data is about personalisation. Now, I've given a clue under there to be adaptive learning, but before we get to that, then let's just have a look at this first question that I'm highlighting that comes from the Digital Learning Realities research. And the question to the responders is, how advanced is your use of technology to support learning experience? Now, this side, so here you won't be able to read that probably, but that's advanced, intermediate, basic, and not applicable. And what we're looking at down this side is things like learning portals, social and collaborative learning, learning campaigns, learner nudging, workflow learning, learning chatbots, and then languishing at the bottom there is personalisation. And in a way, it's quite disappointing. So I've been in the industry for 20 years now, and we have been promising from day one personalisation in the digital world. And yet, we're struggling to do that at the minute. So the next question we've asked is, so how personalised do you make individual experiences? And the top, coaching and mentoring. Yeah, hopefully coaching and mentoring is personalised, otherwise why are we actually doing it? right at the bottom, e-learning courses, and actually as well, just programmatic learning. But as we make the comment, I mean, in the digital world, I mean, this is kind of unforgivable. We need to be delivering much more of a personalised learning experience. And I think now is the time that we would maybe, we're starting to look at this in a lot more detail. So, in terms of, as well, just looking at how advanced is the use of technology for managing learning. So, again, on here we've got it's advanced, intermediate, basic and not applicable. Structured learning programs and then the curriculum management, we're doing okay on. I think we've been doing that for a long time. But adaptive learning is at the bottom of here. I mean, some of us might not actually have been aware of what adaptive learning is. It's been going around for a while, but it's just beginning to kind of come to the fore, I think because there's more competition in the market as well. However, what I would like to do, before maybe talking a little bit about what adaptive is for you around your tables to actually discuss what you are doing at the moment. So here's the questions to discuss. So, are you personalising the learning to be delivered? And I've just given some examples. Is it in the compliance, in the leadership, or in sort of product knowledge? Are you personalising that learning and how? So how granular is it? Is it by role? Is it by the department or the language? How are you doing that? And what I would like then, so if you have a conversation just for a few minutes, establish who's doing what, who's got the best personalisation example, and then we're going to have a roving mic to kind of have you talk to us about what you are doing. Does that make sense? If you're not on a table with enough people to, you know, and you want to join another table, then, discuss. So, what are you doing currently in terms of personalisation? So, have you come up with something to share on your table? And if you have, if you put your hand up, we will get a roving mic to you, so you can just share what personalisation you're doing. So there's one at the back there.
We've got Valentina at the back with a microphone, and me at the front here. We've got a line of demarcation somewhere here, visible. So she'll do the back and I'll do the front.
So nobody else, you've all been talking about the weather, have you?
Hand over there, there it is. I feel like Billy Graham, I see that hand.
Hello? Yeah, it's on. Okay. I was telling people on this table, so I work at a university, and we've developed a maths program whereby the students, depending on the answers they give to some multiple choice questions, will direct them to the most appropriate support they need with their maths. And they also have choices, so they could say, no, I want more practice on this, or I want to delve deeper into this topic, or I want to move on to the next topic. And it's been developed quite straightforwardly in Moodle. It's not a complex piece of technology. But it did require close collaboration between a maths expert who devised all the questions and I'm the technologist who actually then made it happen. And we were then discussing whether that could be applied to courses such as leadership or something that maths is a bit more of a yes, no, you've got it right or not subject.
So that sounds like an adaptive, we'd have to go into detail in terms of how sophisticated, but that's great personalisation. I love that. So anybody else, anybody at the front here that's got something they want to share about personalisation?
Okay, we've got two hands here. I'll come to you first. You were just split second ahead.
Hello, I'm Ifaf in Hands and Technologies. I was just mentioning that we use competency, we're trying to build up the competencies, and it's a real challenge because for each role there are different levels of technical competency. So it's very muddy at the moment, but we're trying.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's an interesting one. We're not going to cover that area. It's probably about skills, competency frameworks. It's a massive topic that all the analysts within Fosway are talking about at all the different levels. And yes, we haven't got our hands around that yet. So, yeah, good luck with that one. And everybody else, yes.
So I ran an adaptive learning pilot about 3 years ago with a technology vendor. And it was terrible. It went really badly, which was a shame because what I was trying to do was increase the speed up to skill. So I work for a consulting firm, so it's very important that we get our consultants up to speed very quickly. And they actually said to me that they found the adaptive learning took them longer because they had to keep answering questions, whereas what they wanted was me to just give them a PowerPoint deck and for them to figure out which bits of content they needed to read. So I'm back again, hoping that the tech has moved on a bit, and really interested in what AI can offer going forward.
Absolutely. No, that's a really great point, because, I mean, at the end of the day, you need to focus on what your learners need. And I know I've worked with one corporate quite some years ago, and I was looking at what L&D were delivering to them. I'm thinking, blimey, we found the cure for insomnia here. But it was exactly what they needed. They just wanted, they were scientists. They just wanted it as quick and, even just in a PowerPoint, all the information, the data they wanted. Whereas others, and we're seeing within the adaptive world that in retail, to gain product knowledge, or it could be call centres, where you just want to keep, it's that Ebbinghaus forgetting curve that we're wanting to combat, and just nudge people into making sure that they've remembered what they're doing. And some of them are gamifying it. I know that's a little bit Marmite. You either love it or hate the gamification piece, but that tends to be what's you definitely got to choose. And I think you're right. The technology's moved on. So yeah, it's interesting. I keep saying to the adaptive learning vendors, it's difficult, it's not. And actually I was just sharing earlier with Steve that France at the minute is going mad about adaptive. I was at the Learning Technologies Paris show in May, and every other booth was talking about adaptive learning, and I'm going, what's going on? It's not happening in the UK that way. And when I started to dig deeper and find out, it was one of those tick box things. The French love innovation, and they were doing pilots, but interestingly, they weren't widening that. Once they'd done a pilot, they weren't moving on from that. I've not gotten to the bottom of exactly what that is. Part of it, I think, is because of the amount of resource required for adaptive. So I think, as this lady was saying, it's adaptive. I'm just going to mention maybe a few things, and then we'll move on to the next subject. And maybe if there's time at the end, if there's other questions or other people want to talk about things, that we can do that. But from 20 years ago, Robin Hoyle, when he was working for EBC, was doing presentations, and this is what he was using. Personalisation means it's learning to provide what an individual needs to know minus what they already know. And if the system, whichever way it does it, knows what that individual knows, then they don't have to give them that piece of information. I think the problem that we've had over 20 years, and this is generalising, in a compliance situation is everybody has been sheep-dipped, if you like, through learning. And it can be patronising for those that know the stuff, frustrating, annoying, and it's no wonder that e-learning has had a bad name over the last 20 years. So this, hopefully, is the start of a new era. Hopefully we're ironing out some of the issues with adaptive, but it is not an easy fix. It's not a case, oh, right, we need to go adaptive, switch it on and let it, leave it going, because it isn't easy. But the vendors are telling me it's getting easier because they're using AI to help create the content. So it's one to watch. It's a new trend. It's the an area that I'm quite excited about, because after 20 years, I'm hoping that as a learning technology is going to be able to deliver on its promise of personalisation. Just to say, a lot of people are talking about personalisation in terms of recommendations engines, and I don't know about you, but I feel as though Netflix and Amazon are getting worse at actually delivering what I want or telling me what I want to know. And in fact, we're being told by a lot of corporates that, or, you know, a lot of folks kind of saying, I'd rather get a recommendation from a peer or a manager or a human being anyway than actually come from the machine, because they are more likely to have got it right. And I do that with Netflix, for example. Somebody tells me, friends say, oh, have you watched this? Okay, I'll go for that. I'm not going to bother with what Netflix tell me. Okay, so another piece of research that I've been looking at over the summer is to do with this customer and partner education. I've put under there extended enterprise. So as analysts and the vendors tend to talk about extended enterprise, but it's a meaningless term in a lot of ways, but we know what we're talking about. But the use cases for this customer and partner education are quite vast, and we've seen through the pandemic how a lot of training that has, for customers, has previously happened in the classroom is now having to obviously go online. And I think what can happen, and it'd be interesting to see, you know, what's going on here, but some of the things that I've seen is that it's a quick, almost knee-jerk reaction, almost the same way as internal L&D was 20 years ago about putting things online. And so I think there needs to be a collaboration between internal and external. So those of you that are doing both, that's great. But there are, it's a new area and it's massively growing, and a lot of the learning systems vendors are taking this into account. So another piece of the data just to feed into this. So we were asking the question, how effective is your learning strategy at delivering the following? The top one, if you can't read that is very effective, over 50%, compliance and regulatory training. All right, we've been doing that a while. At the bottom, extended enterprise. Now, I'm not 100% sure, because we never give any explanation about what we mean in terms of these terms. We just leave it to the responder to make their own mind up. So it might be that a lot of people answering the question just don't, what are you talking about, extended enterprise? And as an industry, we absolutely need to sort out the terminology so that the buyer understands what we are as, you know, in the industry and the vendors and whatever. And so we're working with vendors in some of that, those areas at the moment. So I'm going to come back to you guys, another conversation for you. So, does your company actually do customer or partner education? Now, usually you have customers. If you've got a firm that is working, you know, you need to be making a profit, or maybe not. It could be not for profit, but you would usually have customers. Do you have to train those customers? Or what I mean by partners is it that there are partners who are selling your products, or partners that are training your customers? So how are you training them? What I've got down there is it could be instructor-led or virtually instructor-led training. It could be the same LMS as is being delivered internally. It could be a separate LMS. And is the external team working with the internal team? All right, so have a conversation around your tables. See if there's anybody on your table that's actually involved in the extended enterprise arena, if you like, the customer training it. Or if you kind of know it's happening, but you know it's at a distance and you haven't gotten involved. So have a conversation, and then we'll come back to you, and you know, want one or two of you to actually share what you're actually doing at the minute. That's okay. Okay, so how are you getting on? Who would like to share what they are doing in the customer and partner education piece? Don't be shy.
We were just talking, weren't we, about probably one of the best proponents of customer education is the NHS. Think about it. Anyone here from the NHS? No? It's a shame, isn't it? But they do a really amazing job educating patients, don't they? It's part of the service.
So, I mean, oh, we've got somebody at the back, way at the back there.
Valentina will be with you in a second.
I think you had your hand up before as well.
I did. Hi, Fiona.
Hi. Hi, I can see who it is, Nikki.
Yeah.
Hi.
So in terms of, so I'm Nicola, I'm from AstraZeneca. So I think we do a number of things in the external space. So one of them is we have contract sales organisations who are outselling our products, and therefore we need to ensure that they are fully up to speed with indications, etc. So as they sell onto healthcare professionals, they're actually delivering the right messages around how our drugs work with other drugs or dosage requirements, etc. So that's one thing that we do. We also do quite a lot in terms of availability of information, patient portals around our the drugs that people are on. So that's another aspect. But we do that through a separate portal than our standard LMS, where we train our internal and our contract sales organisations through. And then I think the third piece, which is more of a community one, is just an example, just from through COVID, for example, making our COVID toolkits that we developed that were about dealing with mental well-being, physical stresses, etc., publicising those on LinkedIn and other portals so that other organisations could pick them up and use them. But we'd actually developed those internally, curating different assets from different platforms and providing those to anybody who wanted to access them.
And so were you doing any of that in face-to-face previously, or has it always been an online offering?
So I would say the contract sales is a mix of online and VILT. I would say virtual rather than face-to-face. The patient piece, we do get patient focus groups together for sharing and things like that, and patient stories, but most of that is online.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that. That's a great example. And anybody else doing anything in terms of customer and partner education? All right, we've got one at the front here. Steve, yeah, thanks.
Hi, my name is Larissa, I work in Tetra Pak, and I just want to highlight that we always face one big issue in our company, that we train not only white-collar employees, but we're also working close to blue-collar employees, operators on the machines, and also we train our customers' operators, and that question is never covered in any conference, how to actually educate blue-collar employees close to the operational tasks, close to the equipment, where it's quite loud and they need to have an access to the content, learning content while they're working. So it would be nice to hear about it at some point. Thank you.
I love that. Okay, yes. And in fact, there's a corporate that I potentially will be working with in the manufacturing space. And that's exactly the question that they're after. And actually connect you guys together. So Nicola and yourself, because in terms of getting the standard operating procedures and things like that, so that if there's an update, if there's something that you need to train them on, the one that I'm going to be working with, they want to totally revolutionise their training of the sort of the blue collar workers. And you're right, we've tended to focus on the desk worker And again, gross generalisation, but I think, I mean, something that has happened particularly over COVID, that has improved things for the use of technology at the sharp end, the customer focused end, is the use of mobile. So we've been expecting to use mobile for eight years or so. As corporate's been demanding of the vendors to make sure there was a mobile offering. However, once we've got the product, we've then not been able to implement, because there is, the IT departments have not got a bring their own device policy. There have been issues, sort of internally, until COVID, and some of that has actually now been dealt with. So there's things that, and I'm at the moment kind of wondering whether adaptive is going to help in these areas, but keep an eye over the next sort of few months as we kind of delve deeper into what the art of the possible is for that sort of area, and hopefully we'll have a case study and stuff to share, because it's absolutely something that has not been doing brilliantly. So thanks for that question.
Back here.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, because we need to think not just about what you need to know, but what you need to do, and the learning is to change people's behaviours. And there's some really great stuff going on around technology for people who need to improve their skills at work as part of their workflow or whilst they're on the job. And it's a massive challenge, in particular in the context of our need to upskill and reskill more workers. So it's not just what you need to know, it's what you need to do and how learning helps you change your behaviours.
Great point. Was there somebody else closer? Oh, okay. Let me just, I want to move on, but I just wanted to kind of, we made a comment in our trends report at the back of the 9 grid last year, or earlier this year, and including sort of L&D and internally and externally working together, making sure we're sharing good practice and that kind of thing. And one of the things that I just wanted to say about the industry as well, there's a lot of vendors out there that have been doing the external training along with the internal training for quite some time, and there's a lot of others that are now realizing that there is that need out there. But there's also a range, a spectrum of capabilities, and some of them, it's almost like you can have a new LMS within an LMS, because they're so segregated from a security perspective, etc., that they will have a separate domain or portal, rather than it just being a separate group, and that separate domain or portal can be totally autonomous. There can be totally different branding, and also there can be again, there's a range of the capability of selling that training, capability of doing the e-commerce piece, whether there's they have their own payment gateways or they link to payment gateways, whether there's a shop front or whatever. So there's quite a range out there. And there is also, on the 9 grid, we've got one that we put on there that is a specialist this year, because they only do the external, they focus on the external, whereas a lot of the others actually will do both. And they both have their pros and cons, if you like, from that perspective. Okay, so this next one, programmatic learning, kind of, I've sort of wedged in here because I know what didn't come in the title, but it's an area that I'd like to see more innovation on. The others that we've got movement in the industry. Programmatic learning, what do I mean by that? It's not about the bite size, the micro-learning, it's about the longer programs. And these could be the onboarding programs, it could be leadership programs that are likely to be 3, 6, 9 months or beyond. And what that happened before COVID was quite often these were done in the classroom. obviously, COVID, put everything online, and we managed to kind of get through that. A lot of what we're delivering and what the vendors are delivering is, I mean, some will actually talk about programs and cohorts, and it's about those cohorts going through and managing it at scale, and some do it better than others. There's one or two specialists out there that quite often have come from the education market because they have done programs forever. And what I'm thinking, and I haven't got the, totally focused, because I'm sure we could improve it even better, but it's like having a place to go, like you were going to a classroom or a hotel or whatever for 3 days, or but doing it online, doing it synchronously, asynchronously, a cohort together, they have the ability to collaborate, and the collaboration is the key. And it's being able to make sure that the learning is from your peers. And so although we are doing within learning systems maybe a learning pathway, a learning journey, do this, then that, then the other. You could have a classroom, virtual classroom opportunity. You could actually go into a group and maybe have a discussion, but somehow it's just not, the experience isn't one that the learner is going to say, oh, I'd rather do it online than actually be in a face-to-face situation. And so we need to, as an industry, up our game in this area. So and the reason why, I'll just give you a bit of data. So I said we weren't going to be talking about skills, but here's some data to do with the skills piece. 75% of L&D see that building skills is an increasingly high priority for a successful organisation. It's important that we are building the skills. And this question linked with the previous one. So this one we're basically saying which of the following approaches is currently having the biggest impact on the skills gap in your organisation. And the top line there is the formal internal training programs. And so programmatic learning is important for the upskilling, reskilling agenda as well. There are other ways of doing it. But what I feel that we're not doing brilliantly at the moment, or maybe you're going to prove me wrong here as we discuss it, is that programmatic learning. So what I would like you to do around your tables again is, what do your longer programs look like since the pandemic? Are they still online? Or have you gone back into face-to-face? And what's worked well, what hasn't? So again, if you can just have a conversation around the table and come up with some examples that are really good examples, or even, ask a question or whatever. But have a 5-minute conversation and then we'll regroup. So, how are you doing? Have you got any examples of programmatic learning that you're doing well? Programs that are going well, or any comments to make? So please indicate from your tables what somebody would like to share.
Over here.
One in the middle and then one at the front.
Thank you. My name's Piers, and I'm going to share something that's not something I've implemented. It was something I was part of.
Okay.
Up to about 12 months ago, or as of 12 months ago, I was studying my CIPD qualification.
Right.
And worked with a cohort-based provider. So we ran a live cohort with about 250 people on, so a massive cohort. And we had what you described, the technology was there for the cohort and the program-based learning. But we also set up a LinkedIn group on the side. And about 200 of the people on the cohort joined the LinkedIn group. One of the things that really stood out was that much, much easier to use. WhatsApp would be the same, much easier than any of the learning system that was provided for us. But also, there was a critical mass. Out of the 250 people, 200 joining the LinkedIn group, we were getting between 12 and 25 people joining the outside Zoom chats that we were setting up. We were getting constant streams of conversation, so it kept it alive. And I think that's something which needs those kind of numbers, because if you'd done it as a cohort of 12 to 20 people, you haven't got the mass, you haven't got those conversations happening, and therefore things fizzle out. So I think that there's a few things in there, technology, but also the numbers involved.
Okay. And I suppose from the fact that it was linked in, then that will continue forever, so that those relationships can be continued and built and they don't disappear once you've left the course. There was, I think John down here was, Steve?
Oh,
John had got his
over here, right,
hand up.
okay.
Yeah, so I wasn't initially sure what you meant by programmatic learning, but that is sort of longer learning programs,
Yep.
which we've been doing for years with things like Moodle and Totara, but they are much harder to organise, to manage cohorts, and as that chap said, I agree totally that sometimes they wander off into a different space, which actually isn't too bad. I think that's quite positive. But often the platforms themselves they just don't have that social feel that some of those other platforms do. But I think it's something that we're going to see maybe more of, but they do cost a lot of money. And I think that's a lot of my clients they like the idea, but when it comes to actually, funding things like supporting people, getting people to join these things, I think it can be quite a challenge for a lot of organisations these days.
Absolutely. And I think learning systems have, over the years, have had groups, and because they added them in after everything had gone online, and they realised that the human element was missing, and so there were sort of community groups and things like that. But it's kind of an add-on. It's not the central part to the courses, and I really don't think there's, as I say, there's only a few specialists at the moment that are actually doing this well. And I think it's down to, what I love you guys to do was demand of your learning systems providers to make it better. Because I think we've got to do this, we've got to make it better. Every single briefing I have with any of the vendors, I bring up the fact of programmatic learning and them needing to make it better. Some of it kind of drifts, over, they're not kind of focused on it. And I'm not sure we've all got a handle on it either, per se, but it's, as brilliantly described there, it's about continuing that conversation, having those connections that you maybe would have built up in the classroom, you would have built up, in the breaks at lunchtimes, etc., that we need to be able to find a way to do it online. And so it's an area that I'm, hoping that, we can do it. How are we doing for time? I'm just thinking.
5 minutes.
Okay, all right. Was there any other questions then from that? Because then we can round up.
Over the back there.
Hi. So I just want to ask a question, really, and I honestly want to get your opinion, because I've always worked in industries that are very, very dynamic and quickly changing. And so sometimes having long-term programmatic learning programs don't necessarily work. And so specifically talking about the IT and tech space, when you're trying to bring in developers and that kind of thing, this is the particular problem that we have, that we're finding nowadays, well, at least in the last kind of 5 years or so, 10 years or so, that skills that we used to have as intrinsic part of learning programs usually only have a shelf life now of about 12 to 18 months. So how, from your perspective, do you think that applies to certain industries? Because, as I said, you go by best practice, but sometimes it just doesn't fit with having longer-term plans.
Yeah, it obviously, again, as we said earlier, it depends on who your learners are, whether these, it's not just one size fits all at all. So on this one, we're just talking about the longer-term programs. It's a great, if you like, use case, and within the tech industry, because probably what happened before COVID was your teams, your peers were getting into the classroom with a flip chart and kind of, their ideas being passed backwards and forwards, what's working, what's new, what they've been seeing, and that kind of thing. And that's had to go online. And I know there are certain industries that have struggled with that. And again, it's being able to have a space that, can mean you can, and you have the tools around you. I seem to remember, and I've not used it, but Miro is one tool that I know a lot of IT industries are, IT folks seem to be using, and because it has almost that ability to, the ideation piece, thinking of ideas. So it's a kind of a different problem, and yes, but it's a valid problem, and there's a lot of that going on. So just not time to kind of bottom that one in this this space. So I just wanted to sort of make the statement that we had done in the report that, a poor digital experience hinders most high-value programs. And we talk about high value because they could be quite strategic people in these programs. It could be senior leaders or it could be new starters. And so it's important that we make that environment a great place to be. So just as a summary, so we've looked at, providing an individual what they need to know minus what they already know, and how do you do that's important as well. Think holistically, so include external customer use cases as well as the internal, and then just as we've talked about, that poor digital experience hinders the high value programs. If you want to download anything free of charge from the Fosway website, then we've got the 9-grid report. As I say, the new one will be coming out in January, February. And also the Digital Learning Reality Survey, there's an infographic there. But thank you so much for your attention. If you have any questions, you want to talk to me over coffee, I hope you've been able to connect with people during this time. And have a great rest of the day. Enjoy.